Big tires are no bueno on the factory Wrangler tailgate. After a lot of miles, they can start to crack that tailgate, bend that tailgate. You don't want that. That's why we make our Sheild tire carrier. It's pretty fantastic. It mounts onto any of our mid-width or full-width rear bumpers, and it opens with the tailgate. So there's no extra latch, nothing to worry about. You just grab the tailgate, and it opens right up. It is super easy to install, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So the first step is going to be to remove the wheel and tire off the factory carrier. And at this point you may be asking, why is your wheel pink? And I'd ask you to mind your own business, because I'm a grown man and I can paint this wheel any color I want. And these instructions are going to work if your wheel isn't as cool of a color as pink. Maybe yours is silver or black or something else boring, but you can follow along just the same. I invite you to watch the instructions even though you don't have as cool of a color wheel as I have. Anyway, the first step is to remove this little camera hood here. You're going to take a T40 Torx socket, stick it in there and twist that counterclockwise to the unlock position, and then this just slides off. I have no idea what it's actually for, so we're just going to toss it. Then we're going to remove the lug nuts and pull off our pretty pink wheel. All right, now we're going to pull this wheel and tire off the factory carrier, and to prove I'm still a man, even though I've got a pink wheel, I'm going to do it by myself. So, even though it's a 37 and a, oh Jesus, it was a huge mistake. Oh, it's so big. Ugh. Dang it. Now we got to remove this inner panel inside the tailgate here, and I find just kind of grabbing right here where the wiring goes in and just carefully pulling it off. Works fine. So we're going to remove these top two connectors. This bottom one is for the lock or whatnot. So the first thing to do is take this little red clip and pull it all the way out. And then there's a little black button there. Go ahead and push in. And in theory, this connector comes apart just like that. So that's that one. And then for the coax for the camera, push in the white clip and then pull it straight apart in the same way. Being careful not to break those. So once those are loose, we're going to come to the other side and we're going to pull this wiring and this grommet right through the tailgate. Just like that, so that is loose. Now using a 13mm socket, go ahead and remove the 8 bolts that are holding on the factory tire mount. Then go ahead and remove the whole assembly. All right, so now we have to take apart this factory carrier so we can harvest all of the wiring and the backup camera. And you're going to do that with a T25 Torx. And up here on top, you're going to remove these 7 Torx bits, and then on the tire carrier portion, you're going to remove 2, 1 on each side. So just get those all pulled out, and then you can start to pull that carrier apart. All right, once you get all those loose, you can push these studs through. Yours might be a little tighter than ours, so you may have to use a dead blow hammer for that. But go ahead and pull these studs out there. All right, now we're going to want to take this apart after all the screws are out. So just go ahead and pull this off the back, and then we have to remove this clip. And you would think it'd be on this side, but you'd be wrong. So we have to take our T25 again and pull these 2 screws here to remove the factory third brake light. Then once that's done, we can flip it over, push in the little tab, and pull this apart. So now we have this wiring here, and what we're going to do is pull it through there, and then we'll have most of the wiring loose. Now we have to free the camera from where it's at. So go ahead and flip this back over, and you'll see these kind of black plastic pieces here inside of where the studs were for the lug nuts. So go ahead and push that through, and yours might take a little more force than ours did, but that's the general concept. If you have to use a little brass puncher or something, that'll work fine. Then once you have this little camera mount out, you're going to want to grab a T8 and remove these 3 tiny little screws to get this camera free. Once those 3 screws are removed, go ahead and pull this camera out, and then there's a little pink clip there. Push that in and pull the camera free of the wiring harness, and then pull the wiring harness free. All right, so all you need from the factory tire mount is this wiring harness and this camera. Everything else you can throw in the trash. All right, so we went ahead and got that spare tire off and the spare tire mount, and now we have to pull these vents right here. So to do that, we got to open up the gate. All right, so it's kind of hard to see, but there are clips right here, 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And all we have to do is just pick one. We'll pick the top ones here and just go ahead and stick a flat blade screwdriver in there and push that clip down while you gently pull out on the other side. So there's one. Do it right there as well. And these will pull right out. Do that for both vents. All right, so now we're going to bolt on the tailgate plate portion of our Sheild tire carrier. So this is going to bolt right on with the 8 factory bolts that you pulled out. Now yours isn't going to have this worthless hole in it like ours has. This is a design change that we made for the final. But besides that, it's going to look just like this. So make sure that these tabs are on the driver's side and these tabs are on the passenger side. And go ahead and bolt that in with the 8 factory bolts. Now you can pull these rubber bumpers if you want, but they won't be in the way. So unless you have something else to seal those holes with, I just leave them. If you've had our rear bumper on for a while, you probably have these protective caps on there on the top and on the bottom. Go ahead and remove those and then take the spindle and slide it on into the sleeve. It may not slip right down, so you can use a dead blow on these upper threads if you want, but don't use a regular hammer. You will ruin these threads and cause a big headache. Use a plastic hammer or a dead blow. That'll go in just like that. All right, now from the bottom, take this big grade 8 bolt that we give you and thread it into the spindle. Make sure the washer's on there. You can use a little anti-seize on this bolt just for rust preventative if you want. Go ahead and thread that up into the spindle just by hand for now. All right, go ahead and take a 1 1/8 inch end wrench and go ahead and start to tighten that bolt. You'll have to hold on to the spindle from the top, but you should be able to do that by hand. But if you have to use something to hold this spindle, there's kind of a safe area between these 2 bearing surfaces that you can grab with a pair of pliers. Don't do the bearing surface and don't do the surface for the seal, but right in here you can safely grab it if you need to, but you shouldn't. You should be able to hold on to this just by hand while you tighten down that lower bolt. I don't have a torque spec on this for you because you probably won't be able to get a torque wrench in there anyways, but let's just call it really tight. That 3/4 inch grade 8 can handle more torque than you're going to be able to put on it, so don't worry about that. We're going to go ahead and grease these bearings now, so you might want to get a pair of gloves on. And there's kind of a trick to this, but it's really simple. All right, grab grease. It doesn't matter what grease you use for this at all. There's no heat or anything involved, but grab some grease and you want to put it in your palm just like this. Then you want to grab the bearing. This is one of the roller bearings here. And then you kind of want to take this bearing and work it at an angle and just take a little grease each time. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to force this grease up. You can see right there, starting to force through the rollers. And once it gets up on a few rollers, just go ahead and turn it. Kind of force it through the grease at an angle into your palm. And the grease will push itself up into the bearing. Go ahead and repeat this process on the second bearing. While you have this grease on this glove, go ahead and just grease the inner lip of the seal. You don't have to go nuts on it, but add some grease on the inner lip, and then I just wipe a little bit on the dust wiper too. Just like that. All right, go ahead and take your Sheild carrier, turn it upside down, and rest it on a bench or a stool on a towel so you don't hurt it, and then throw one of the bearings that you greased in there. Then take the seal here, and you're going to see kind of a dust lip on the seal. That's going to go out. So we're just going to set this right on top of there. Then we're going to take a small punch, and we're going to hammer this in slowly at first to get it started. Then we're going to work our way around it. All the way around Just like that. Just make sure it's hammered in there and that it's even. Once it's in there enough, it should be just under flush. This rubber seal will be just under flush with the sleeve of the tire carrier. All right, if your cap is on your tire carrier, go ahead and remove that. And then if the nut and washer is on this spindle still, go ahead and pull that as well. And then take your tire carrier with the bearing that you inserted in the seal down and slide that over the spindle. You're going to kind of have to wiggle it a little bit to get it to seat there. Now take the other bearing that you greased, and set that in the carrier from the top. Push that down, and then grab the big washer and the nut and loosely thread that on. All right, so the right tool for this is a 1.5 inch socket. But if you don't have that, you can use a large adjustable wrench or even a pair of channel locks to tighten this down. But if you do that, be careful that you're not rubbing your tool on the threads. There's threads in the spindle for the cap, and you do not want to ruin those threads. You'll have a bad day. So I'm just going to tighten this down until it seats the bearings. So that lower bearing is going to seat against that metal like step, I guess, down there. And you're going to feel it tighten up a little bit. This doesn't need to be really tight. You just need to take the bearing play out of it. And then it's going to give you a little resistance to opening and closing, but you don't have to go crazy with this. If you find that this bolt is loosening up, or this nut, is loosening up and you're getting some play in this carrier, you can Loctite it and then re-tighten it down. Or now you're going to want to take this machined aluminum cap and make sure that there is a black O-ring on it right there, and then add some anti-seize to the threads. This is really important because this cap is aluminum and this spindle is steel, and those dissimilar metals will corrode together if you don't add some grease or some anti-seize or something on the threads. Gross. And anti-seize will get everywhere. There's no way around that. All right, once you get anti-seize on this and everything else that you own in your garage, go ahead and start it in a few threads by hand just to make sure that the threads are lined up properly, and then grab the tool we give you and tighten it down. All right, in your hardware kit are 2 Heims, a male and a female. Yeah, you want more anti-seize, so put some more anti-seize on the threads of this Heim joint here, and then there'll be a fine thread jam nut. Go ahead and thread that on. All right, now once that jam nut's threaded on, you can thread these 2 pieces together. You know, we have no idea at this point what the length is going to be, so we'll just guess. All right, now in your kit you're going to find 4 of these misalignment washers. They look just like that. Grab 2 of them, put one on the bottom of this tab and one on the top with their tapers facing inward, and then slide this Heim joint between them. Doesn't matter which end of the Heim you use. Then take a 1/2 inch bolt and a washer and push that through the top, and just loosely put a jam nut on there for now. All right, now take this Delrin block that's in your kit, and that is going to slide between these 2 brackets. You're going to take a bolt and a washer, and then 2 flange nuts here, and we're just going to leave this loose for right now. All right, now go ahead and close the shield carrier against the plate, and you can see right here this Delrin bushing should kind of nest on the metal triangle here on the tire carrier itself. Get that all closed, and then you can kind of guess at the length of this Heim joint. See right there, it needs to be a little longer. So this is just a guess for right now, but you want to get it so that it just barely is centered in the hole, because we do want a little bit of tension on it. That might be too centered, so we'll try that right there. So just almost centered in that hole. Then we're going to go ahead and open it back up. Go and open your tire carrier and open your tailgate and grab the last 2 misalignment washers. One on the bottom, one on the top. with their tapers facing each other. And then we're going to slide this Heim into the carrier. And we may have to rotate this little spherical bearing inside of here to get everything aligned. You're going to need 3 hands for this one, but get everything slid together there. Try to hold it all from falling out. And then grab one more of those 1/2-inch bolts and washers, and then slide everything together like that. And then find the nut that you lost. Here it is. Find the flange nut, and then just loosely put that flange nut on there. All right, now we're going to test the adjustment on this Heim joint. So we're going to go ahead and close this tailgate. And what should happen is you should see this Delrin bushing contact just maybe a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch before the gate closes. And you can close the gate like that. And then kind of the test is if you can grab this tire carrier and try to pull it off, you should be able to do it, but it should be pretty difficult. So that feels pretty good right there. We're not putting too much tension on the tailgate, but it's nice and tight. Now this can loosen up over time, so you may have to readjust this, but all you have to do is spin that Heim either together or apart, and that'll change how tightly this tire carrier is tied against the tailgate. All right, with the gate closed and tightly against this Delrin bushing, we're going to go ahead and tighten these bolts down. 9/16 socket and 9/16 end wrench should be able to do that for you. All right, before we adjust and tighten down that Heim joint, I want to get the weight of the spare on there. So we're going to assemble this tire carrier portion. Now this is made to accept any Jeep pattern, any 5-lug Jeep pattern, sorry. And there's a diagram on our website to show you which holes to use, but there's an easy way to do it as well. Just go ahead and set it on your spare tire, spare wheel rather, and go ahead and rotate it until you find the pattern that matches your wheel. There it is, 5-on-5 for this JK. And just go ahead and mark the 3 holes with a Sharpie or a paint pen or whatever. All right, once you get your bolt pattern marked, go ahead and set that aside. Now we're going to measure this tire for the height on the tire mount. So what we want is just a quick estimate of the center to the outside diameter. This is going to be about 18 or so inches. Then we want to use a broomstick across the tire like that, and then measure the depth. And this is going to be just about 7 inches. Now that we have that measurement, we're going to go ahead and mount this inner plate of the tire plate at least 18 inches up on center. So technically we could get away with all the way at the bottom, but we want a little bit of clearance, so we're going to jump it 1 bolt from the top. Go ahead and open the tailgate up so you get the most room, and then we can grab these short 1/2-inch bolts with a washer. Pop them through the top first, and then go 1 hole down, and then loosely put some 1/2-inch flange nuts on the back side. Then we can do the same on the bottom holes. Now you can tighten all those down with a 3/4 inch socket and a 3/4 inch end wrench. All right, now we want to take the outer portion of this tire plate and go ahead and slide it inside of the inner portion. We have these carriage head bolts here. Just place 1 through the top and another flange nut through the bottom. Another one of those 3-handed operations. Go ahead and put that flange nut on just for a few threads. And then 2 more carriage bolts from the side. All right, go ahead and tighten this upper flange nut just enough so you can slide this mount in and out. Then take that measurement that you had earlier, I think ours was 7 inches, and we're going to go ahead and set this just a 1/4 inch shy of that. So we're going to set this to 6 3/4. And that's because when you tighten the tire down, it'll squeeze it just barely against this carrier, and it will stop it from shaking. Now if you need more than 7 inches or so of space sticking out of here, you're going to have to add a wheel spacer. This is designed for the back spacing that most people are going to run, which is right around 5.5 and lower back spacing, so 5.5, 5, 4.5, etc. If you're running a factory wheel, you're going to have to add a wheel spacer on top of this mount. All right, once you get that depth set, go ahead and tighten these down. The upper one you're going to have to tighten with a 3/4 inch socket. That's all that's going to fit in there. And the side ones you're going to have to tighten with a 3/4 inch end wrench. All right, once you get all those bolts tightened and you get this mounted, we can go ahead and pull these wheel studs in. So we're going to put one through the mark that we made earlier, grab 2 washers and the extra lug nut that we give you, and thread this lug nut on backwards. So the flat portion of the lug nut against the washers. Then go ahead and grab a 13/16 socket. And you can do this with an impact, of course, but you can actually do it by hand. Once it's mounted, we have a lot of leverage we can work against. Kind of watch from the back and you'll see that stud get pulled in. And once you see all the daylight go away behind it, you know it is tight. Repeat that for the other 2 wheel studs. Now if you use an impact, be careful, this nut is going to get very hot. All right, now go ahead and put the inner portion of your license plate relocation bracket on top of that tire mount. Then go ahead and mount your tire. And since no one is currently around, I'm going to do it by myself again. Lift with my knees. Oh my gosh, it's so big. Oh, why don't I just run 31s? But I gotta be cool. Oh, yeah. All right, now the studs on these carriers are 1/2 inch 20, and we're going to provide you with some lug nuts that you can use, but depending on your wheel, you may need something a little more low clearance so you can fit a socket in there. We are going to use these open lugged 1/2 inch 20 lug nuts that will use a 3/4 inch socket. Go ahead and tighten these down. All right, once you get this tire on here, you can see with weight on it, we have a little bit of play there. So we have to adjust that Heim before we tighten everything down. Super easy to do. All right, this is a trial and error kind of deal, but what we're going to do is we're going to pull this bolt here all the way up. It doesn't matter which one you do. And then slide this Heim joint out, catch those misalignment washers. And then I'm going to do 1 full turn inward. So 1/2, 1 right there. And I think that should give us plenty of preload. So we're going to go back and pop this on here again on top of the bottom misalignment washer. Slide the top misalignment washer in. Then go ahead and slide this 1/2 inch bolt back through again. And just loosely put the nut on the bottom. Then we'll check that. So we can see that bracket contact the dowel ring about 3/4 inch before it closes. Yeah, that feels really good. So let's go ahead and tighten down that Heim. All right, so with a 3/4 end wrench and a 3/4 socket, you can go ahead and tighten down both of these 1/2 inch bolts on the carrier and on the gate itself. We supply you with this really sweet little LED license plate light, but there's no 12-volt circuit, there's no running light circuit in the tailgate from the factory, so we have to go find one. And the easiest place is going to be in the passenger side tail light. So we're going to take that apart first. Let's get started on that. All right, so to get the tail light off, first you have to pull this little cover off, and you can use a dash clip tool or whatever. Just pop that guy off, and then use a T40. There's a little white Torx head screw in here. It's plastic, and that just takes a T40. So go ahead and loosen that all the way up. They're not on there very tight at all. Then you're going to see this kind of crazy looking plastic spring, whatever. Once that bolt is removed, the taillight comes off pretty simply. Just go ahead and pull it right off the corner there, and then we'll disconnect it so we can work on the bench. Take this red clip and push it all the way out. And this might be a little difficult, but there's a black clip right here that we have to push down while at the same time pulling these clips apart. And this one fights me every single time. So there we go, got that apart. All right, so to get the wiring from the tail light to the tailgate, we have to go underneath this plastic here. So we're gonna have to take some stuff apart. We have to get this rubber out, and that is covered by this plastic portion here on our soft top. So the first step is to kick out that C-pillar part of the soft top there, and then with a T50, go ahead and remove this bolt. Once that's done, you can pull off this plastic piece here, and that will give you access to this rubber gasket here. If this is underneath your hardtop, sorry, I don't have a hardtop to figure that out, you may be able to do this without pulling this gasket off. You can just pry it back to get the plastic off. But with a soft top, it's so easy just to pull this gasket. I would do it that way. Go ahead and with your tool, pop up those two little plastic Christmas tree thingies, and then go ahead and pull that rubber just kind of down out of the way. Now we are going to separate this plastic here, and the first step with your dash tool or a screwdriver is to pop up the seatbelt trim here. Pop that up and move that out of the way. And then this is all clips right here. So you got to be careful you don't break anything, but we're just going to go ahead and pull this plastic apart. That's as far as we have to go. What we're trying to get to is this grommet right here. We're going to poke our wires through this grommet. We're going to run them down here, and this is the harness for the tailgate. So we're just going to follow that harness into the tailgate with our wiring for the license plate LED. So take a Phillips screwdriver and remove these 3 screws here, and that'll take this back cover off, and that'll give us a little more access to the wires that we're trying to get to here. All right, so once you get this plastic piece off here, you're gonna see a bunch of wires. What you're looking for is the blue and the purple wire, and we're just gonna cut those just like that. So there it is, the blue and the purple wire here that goes to the factory connector. And then we are gonna go ahead and just strip off a little sheathing from this blue and purple wire. Be careful while you're doing this. The wires are really small, and you don't want to cut any of the wire. You just want to strip about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch off of the sheathing. All right, so we're going to provide you with some black and some red primary wire here. You want to strip a little bit off from these as well. And then we're going to supply you with these shrink and seal butt connectors. These things work really great. You're going to take the red wire and you're going to twist that together with the blue wire that goes towards the connector that goes towards the vehicle. You're going to twist those wires together. You're going to slide that into one end of these butt connectors. Make sure that both wires are in there, and you're going to go ahead and crimp that tightly. And once you do that, you're going to want to make sure that that crimp is nice and tight and those wires are not going to pull out. Then you're going to take the black wire and you're going to connect it with this purple wire. Remember, connect to the side that goes to the vehicle. Twist those together. And then insert those into the other butt connector that we supply. Make sure they're all the way in the butt connector and go ahead and crimp that connector down. Now we're going to take this purple and black wire and connect it to the purple wire that goes into the taillight. That wire is really small, so be very careful and be extra sure that you crimp it tightly. You may have to use the smaller crimp portion of your pliers. Make sure that's in there nice and tight. And then do the same thing with the red and the blue wire. Those go to the blue wire that goes into the back of the taillight. Same deal. It's pretty small, be careful. Crimp it extra tight. All right, now that you have those butt connectors connected, we're going to go ahead and shrink these tubes. So I've got a heat gun here. You can also use a hair dryer. You can use a lighter, but be careful, a lighter can actually melt it. And what you're going to do is just work your heat gun or your hair dryer or your lighter quick over these heat shrink tubes. You're going to see them start to shrink. Then there's a glue in here, like a hot glue, that's going to melt as well. And when you see that start to seep out of the end of the connector, you know that they're shrunk enough and that everything is hot enough. On these smaller wires, they may not shrink enough, so what you can do is take your pliers and just go ahead and grab one edge of the connector there and crimp it. And that'll make a little flag looking piece on that connector, and that'll squeeze that glue out. Just hold it like that, so everything is nice and sealed. All right, check these connectors and make sure that they're all watertight, that you can see some glue squeeze on both sides, that those little flags are tight enough. Little flags that you pinched are tight enough to seal the other end of the wires. And then go ahead and grab some electrical tape and just tidy this up, just basically so that if this new red and black wire ever gets pulled for any reason, that it's not going to pull those connectors apart. So just use some tape just to clean this up a little bit. You can tape the connectors all the way. This is all LED and pretty low power, so we're not super worried about it, but we just don't want any corrosion here. So we're going to feed these wires through this grommet here. So I'm going to take a punch, or you can use a screwdriver or whatever, and I'm going to make a hole right on the edge there, just big enough to feed those wires through. Be careful you don't actually poke the harness when you do that. Now we're going to go ahead and reattach this plastic bracket that we removed earlier with the Phillips head screws that we removed. Now go ahead and pull that black and red wire up through the hole in the grommet that you made earlier, and make sure you're going through the tail light hole in the back. Go ahead and reconnect this harness, clip the safety clip back in, and make sure you feed the loose wire up there, and then reinstall your tail light. Go ahead and reinstall the bolt that you removed from the tail light and tighten it down. Don't over tighten this, it only needs to be barely snugged. So we're going to follow this wire harness here with our new red and black wire, but we want it inside of this factory loom here. So to do that, we're just going to pop these clips out. You can use a screwdriver, or you can use this as like a dash tool. Works really well for getting these clips out without ruining them. So we got all those out. And this one was already removed, but that's usually right in there. So now we have to get our wires in here, but we want to do that without ruining these clips, because these factory clips are pretty hard to come by. So here is a little trick that you can do. So you know how zip ties work? There's a little plastic clip in there that holds the zip. What you can do is you can put a little pressure on it, and you'll see that give you a little space to put a pick in. Go ahead and hold that inner clip down, and you can open it right up, and we can reuse this factory zip. Do the same thing for this one inside the Jeep. Now we want to pull off this factory cloth tape, and do that with a pair of scissors or a pair of nips. Be sure that you don't cut through any of the wires when you do this. We'll retape it with just regular electrical tape. We just want to get into this nylon loom. Just like that on that side. And we'll do the same on the opposite side. All right, now we're going to follow this loom with our new red and black wire, and you can tape or loom this if you want in here. It's going to be all hidden under the plastic, so we're not really worried about it getting damaged. But if you're super picky about stuff like that, go ahead and get some small wiring loom and loom it up. But we're just going to slide it in through this nylon sheath here. And go ahead and pull it through the opposite side. Now we're going to use a couple zip ties or some tape, whatever you want, to just tape these wires to this factory harness, just so it doesn't move around. And then we are going to retape this factory nylon loom on both sides. Reinstall the zips that you pulled earlier, and you may have to take your pick and push that plastic piece down just a little bit in case they don't grab. Now reinstall this harness back on all of its pegs and the clips back in their respective holes. All right, so go ahead and zip tie this red and black wire to the wiring harness in the bottom of your tailgate. Zip tie it, or you could use tape too. And I know this is a ridiculous amount of work for a license plate light, but if it's legal in your state, this is way better than getting a ticket, because I'm not gonna pay your ticket. So, you know, that's all on you. So once you get this red and black wire all the way to this side, you can just let it hang right there. We'll work with that later. Now we're gonna go ahead and put this interior trim back together in the exact same way that it came apart. It all snaps right back in. Make sure it's underneath this rubber gasket here. Make sure all the clips are snapped, and then you can go ahead, put the taillight bolt cover back on. Remember these little plastic clips that hold on the tailgate rubber. If you remove those can push right back in again. And then if you have a soft top, reinstall this bracket with the hardware that you removed and a T50 Torx bit. And then snap your soft top back into place. Make sure it's all tight. And that's it for that, good as new. All right, so here's the connector for the factory third brake light. We're gonna need to cut that off. Ooh, here's one I prepared earlier. So once that's cut off, we will take these wires and we will strip them. Just like that. So after you get the vehicle side harness stripped, go ahead and stick it through the hole in this bracket. And don't forget to do this, or you're gonna be sad like I was 5 minutes ago when I forgot to do this and I had to do it all over again. So slide that through the hole in that bracket, and then go ahead and take the butt connectors that we give you and crimp just one side. The factory wires are white and black here. So we are just going to stick these on one side. Now go and grab the third brake light that we give you, and you're going to be compelled to wire it with the white to the white green and the black to black, but don't do that. This is a trailer LED, and they're wired with white as ground and black as battery positive. So we're actually going to wire these in backwards. So black is going to go to white green, which is the brake light positive on this vehicle. Go ahead and slide that in and crimp it. And then white is going to go to black. Black is the ground in the vehicle. White is the ground on this light. Go ahead and crimp that as well. Make sure you're, oh, see, look, bad crimp. You always got to check those crimps and to make sure that they're tight, or you're going to have a bad connection. So usually when they pull out that easy, you can slide it right back in again and then re-crimp it. Perfect. Go ahead and grab your heat gun or your hair dryer or your lighter and heat shrink these butt connectors. I said butt. Now I'm going to go ahead and tape this up just for aesthetics. It should be perfectly sealed without the tape, but that way the whole harness here is the same color. All right, now we are going to take the grommet end, the end that goes in the vehicle, and we are going to take a punch or a pick or a screwdriver or whatever you've got here, and we are going to punch a hole right there in the bottom of this rubber grommet without punching into the wire. So, you know, you can peel this back, Watch your fingers, be really careful. And open it up just big enough to fish this red and black wire through, but small enough so that the rubber will reseal around them. And then once you get that hole done, maybe just one at a time, push that wire through there. And you can kind of see it right there in the end. And you can even use your pick at this point and just kind of sacrifice the end of the wire and push it through. But make sure that you clip that end of the wire off once you pull it through there. All right, there's one. And for the second one, what we can do is take just a little bit of tape and tape this second wire to the first very tightly, but not with so much tape that it creates this huge extra diameter. And then we can pull this through. May have to feed it through on both sides, but and once that tape gets through on this side, go ahead and grab it. Pull both through. Now go ahead and pull them through equally, and then most likely you'll probably have to cut some off because you may have sacrificed the sheathing when you pulled on them. But go ahead and pull them so that the ends of these wires are just about even with the connectors. So it'll look just like that. And then we'll go ahead and tape this side of the grommet just to keep everything nice looking, even though this is going to be buried inside the tailgate. Just like that. Now we're going to take our infamous license plate light and we are going to line it up with the end of the connector for the camera, just about right there. Go ahead and cut it. And strip the wires. These are super small, just like the factory JK light wires, so be careful when you strip them. Just like that. Strip our red and black wires that you just ran through that grommet. Like that. Take two more of the crimp and seal connectors. That one's a little long, so we can just trim it up a little bit. Crimp them on the wire side here. Go ahead and connect the license plate light wires black to black and red to red on these crimp connectors, and be careful when you crimp them. These wires are tiny, so you may have to use the smaller crimpers on your pliers, but that could damage this shrink sheathing, so just be super extra careful while you're doing it. Sometimes if you accidentally punch a little hole in the sheathing with your crimpers, just like that right there, once you heat it, it'll close right back up, so keep that in mind as well. Now we're going to go ahead and tape up this harness, and we provide you with some loom to cover this up, or you can just do a really great tape job and that'll look awesome as well. Entirely up to you. At some point you're going to want to keep the split between the brake light and the license plate light and the camera coaxial. With the camera coaxial and the license plate light, you can tape almost up to the top, maybe leave 5 inches untaped. If you are installing our tire carrier delete plate, there's going to be a lot of extra harness here. You can go ahead and just loop it up behind the license plate. I'll show you how to do that in a second. If you are installing our license plate relocation bracket in our Sheild carrier or our adventure carrier, you might need a lot of this harness. Cool. All right, now we're going to assemble this license plate and backup camera relocation bracket. The first thing we're going to grab is this bracket right here with the hole in it. You can see the bend kind of faces backwards. And we're going to grab the camera right here, and you'll see it has 3 ears. The top portion is missing an ear. And it's going to be confusing because that sticker is on what I think is upside down. But at any rate, you're going to put it in just like this with that ear facing down, the blank spot on top, camera through the hole there. You're going to grab this bracket right here with the square in it, and that's going to go over the top of this, and that's going to kind of slide right on that camera and sandwich the camera between the 2 brackets. Now we're going to grab this license plate bracket, and this whole situation is going to go behind that, just like that. We're going to give you some 1/4-inch stainless button heads. Go ahead and slide those through all 3 layers of bracket. You may have to wiggle them around just a little bit to get them through. And then there's some 1/4-inch flange nuts that go on the back there. Go ahead and loosely install those, and once everything is lined up and looks really good, take a 5/32 hex and tighten everything down. And once it's all tightened down, your camera should be nice and tight, sandwiched between those metal plates. Now we're going to grab our license plate, and that's going to set on this bracket like this. 2 more 1/4-inch button head stainless fasteners, flange nuts on the back. Just like that. All right, once you get this license plate bracket bolted up, your factory wiring harness will look something like this. Go ahead and tape it up so it kind of resembles that. Then we're going to give you some of this wire loom right here, and you're going to start it right up here on top of the camera. And the easiest thing to do is start it that way. So it's just covering that kind of pink connector on the camera. And then we'll take a little bit of electrical tape here, and we'll tape the first part of this loom, just like that. Then after we've got that portion taped like that, we can go ahead and start to work it down on this factory wiring harness. And this will just protect that wiring as it goes through the wheel. Now we can put a little bit of tape on here just to make sure that this doesn't move all around or open back up again at the end. And then a few places in the middle. Then from the front, it looks nice and clean. All right, now we're going to feed this through the exact opposite way we're going to take it off if we ever have to remove this spare tire. All the wiring clips through the center of our spare tire mount here, the grommet and everything, and then go ahead and feed in that wire loom that you just made. Now go ahead and drop one of the 1/4-inch stainless button heads we give you through the back hole, and then put a 1/4-inch flange nut underneath. Just loose for now. And then take the second 1/4-inch button head, push that mount back, and then slide the second nut on from underneath. You can kind of pick your depth here on this plate mount, but you want to be able to tighten up that innermost button head. So that's going to kind of limit how deep you can go with it. But go ahead and tighten these up with a 5/32 hex wrench. And pull your wiring harness through this outer slit here, and then push the connectors through the tailgate. And then push the grommet in. Come on the inside and make your connections. Then you can reattach this inner panel. All right, now if you want to install our Sheild high lift mount, that's going to go right here. First put the bolts on that mount the high lift, and there's some little clip washers in there. That goes against the tire. And then we give you some button head bolts and some flange nuts right here. One on each of those. The bottom bolt is fixed, but the top one will slide in and out to accommodate different styles of high lift jacks. And this is going to tighten down with a 9/16 end wrench and a 7/32 hex socket or key handle. All right, so go ahead and bolt this high lift on with the wing nuts, and be careful to check the clearance between the base and the high lift and the light when you open the tailgate all the way up. That's really important that you want to check that. You can move it up or down on this mount if you need to. All right, that's it. If you notice any rattles down the road, you can go ahead and readjust that Heim joint. If you notice any squeaks, you can use a spray lube on the Heim joint or on that Delrin bushing. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to us via phone at 269-353-1184 or email tech@jcr.us. Thanks for your order. Thanks for becoming part of the JCR Offroad family, and we'll talk to you soon.